Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight for this virtual workshop on overcoming debt and rebuilding financial health. According to financial experts, about 80% of Americans are caught up in the debt cycle and are dealing with some forms of debt. A recent Bankrate report found that the average American is carrying over $92,000 in debt, with balances often coming from a combination of credit cards, student loans, auto, personal loans, home loans, such as mortgages. We often hear from our members that dealing with debt is not only stressful, but oftentimes getting in the way of them reaching their other financial goals. So tonight we've invited two experts to talk with us about ways to pay off our debt, break the debt cycle, and develop some strategies to build financial health in the future.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brittany Eaton. I am the collections manager at Town & Country. I've been with Town & Country for a little over 9 years now, and I've been in the collections department for about 7.5. I truly love what I do every day, helping members find solutions, helping them with their debt, building budgets with them. So collections to me is a little bit different than what everyone else thinks of just calling. We really like to help our members best way possible. And Tanya, if you wanted to go next.
Great. Thanks, Brittany. My name is Tanya Sambatakis, and I am primarily a bankruptcy attorney or bankruptcy trustee as well. I usually represent both individuals and small businesses that are seeking relief from their debt, whether it's to reorganize, to liquidate. And as part of that process, you learn quite a bit, frankly, about kind of things to be aware of. And I've been doing this for about 15 years or so, and I love it. I think it's great. I'd really love to be able to help on kind of the ground level and give people an opportunity and kind of a path forward where they may have not thought that there was one before.
I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background about Town & Country. So we're a member-owned cooperative. We're serving Cumberland and York counties. We have 6 different branch locations located in Portland, South Portland, Scarborough, and Saco. We've been helping people navigate financial hurdles and protect their future since 1953. And we are a full-service financial institution with 40,000 members and growing. So what you'll learn today, we're going to talk about how debt can really be a significant obstacle to reaching your financial goals. We're going to talk about how to recognize when you're in too deep with the debt, some strategies to break that debt cycle. We're going to give you some debt relief options and some steps to rebuild your financial health.
So you see the slide on the screen now. Consumer debt is on the rise. It's been a strange couple of years, probably to say the least. But the overall trends were that the consumer debt last year, so 2020, actually decreased a bit. And the theory behind that is because of the government stimulus programs and the additional funds that were available, it allowed folks to address debts that may have been outstanding. With the student loan forbearances where you didn't have to make your student loan payments, or the mortgage forbearances that were also offered, it allowed people to divert some funds that ordinarily would have been paid on those to pay down other debt. Unfortunately, that's not really a long-term solution for most people to deal with the debt. So consumer debt is on the rise. And it seems like right now it's up, I believe, 4% or so over last year. And you can see these trends on the side here. The median credit score has increased, and I'm sure that is a result of paying down some debt. But you see here, as far as the credit cards and the retail cards, there's average of, 5.3 credit cards. That's kind of like, 2.3 children. So we just want, probably we can figure maybe 6 credit cards. Student loan debt, $40,000. Based on what I see, that's seems to be on the low side because, as I'm sure a lot of you unfortunately have experienced, that student loan debt is a real problem. Mortgage debt, my guess is that is only going to be increasing in the future with the prices of homes increasing the way that they have been. Mortgage debt, consequently, is also increasing. So, I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom here, but unfortunately, the reality is that people's debt situation ebbs and flows. And 2020, as far as the debt numbers, I think perhaps painted a rosier picture than people may actually be experiencing. So for those of you that, again, can relate to that or have any questions, we're going to kind of dig in to how to deal with debt for the long term and not just the Band-Aids that were available last year for a lot of folks with the debt that they may have had outstanding.
So life happens. If you're looking at this list, there's a few of you that have gone through at least one of these life-changing experiences, and you really didn't know how to navigate through them. So that's exactly what we're going to try and help you with this evening. So a few of these things: inflation. I think, as a lot of you know, my grocery bill has increased significantly. Stuff is going up: gas, oil, our day-to-day expenses, and how do you adjust your budget and work through that? Divorce, have you gone from 2 incomes to 1? What does that look like for you now? Maybe you were hurt on a job and now you are out of work for a short period of time. Or even you changed jobs, you had a lapse in pay, and so you had to deal with that gap in your budget. Unplanned emergencies. I think dog has to go to the vet. They need that bill right up front. You can't do usually a payment plan with them. So again, how do you navigate through those unexpected things?
Great. And, inflation is kind of one of those things where you don't necessarily think about when you're thinking about your budget and kind of your financial situation. And it just creeps up on you. And especially those that are on fixed incomes, it, of course, inflation will hit those folks even harder going forward.
So, personal impact of debt. How do you know when you may be getting in trouble with that? What are the red flags, the signs? I think a lot of the things, are you starting to just feel some stress and anxiety? You are noticing your mounting bills are coming in. You're reaching for those credit cards a lot more. You are falling behind in your payments. Are you getting a lot of calls from maybe people in my department, and you need to step back and just say, like, what's going on? You're noticing that change maybe in your relationship conflict because of all these things. So again, this is going to give you some steps of just noticing that impact. What can you do to fix it? And we're going to try and give you solutions. And I think Tanya is going to share. Do you have any examples of what you see people struggling with?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and by the time people get to the place where I was going to say they want to meet with me, but that's probably not the right term, maybe willing to meet with me, that means that they more than likely are not sleeping at night. They're likely fighting with their spouse because oftentimes, even if you love your spouse, that does not mean that you view debt in the same way. And that can cause a lot of stress in a relationship. A lot of stress, a lot of blame. They're often not opening their mail because they know what's in the envelope and they know that they can't do anything about it. So that isn't, that's useless to open the mail anyway. So it's one of those things where, when I'm sitting with someone and I'm saying these things, they look at me like maybe I'm psychic, which I'm not, but it's human behavior as far as how we deal with this. And the good thing is, because we can identify this, we can also talk about how to solve it, because a lot of people are experiencing the same issues and the same stressors, and they're dealing with the same way, which means that we can find ways to help through it because we can understand where you are.
So I love this slide. Take a breath and begin, because debt can be very overwhelming, as the stuff we talked about before. So if you think about it, getting caught in a spiral of debt, it often happens over time. It didn't just happen one day overnight and you woke up and you had all this debt. So breaking the cycle is going to take time as well. So we're going to try and give you strategies to get out of that debt, break the debt cycle, but just take a breath and begin, because again, it's going to cause a lot of stress and anxiety. It's not going to be easy, and it may take a lot longer than you anticipate. So just really try and just stop and look back and just know, again, it's going to take some time and it's not going to happen overnight. So we just wanted to add that piece in there. So committing to change.
Great.
Yeah.
So this is where we get into the hard work here as far as how to do this. So the first step is to have a goal. And I would encourage you to have a specific goal. I wouldn't think that a goal of paying off my debt is going to help you that much. I mean, big picture, it makes sense, but it's like someone saying, I want to lose weight. Well, okay, but how are we going to get there? Let's have concrete benchmarks. So, for example, if you just purchased a new car and you have a 7-year loan, right? Because those are pretty typical nowadays. You might want to think about, okay, I don't want to be paying on my car for 7 years. My goal is to cut the loan down to 5 years. So the next step would be make a plan. So you do the math and you figure out, okay, so if I want to take 2 years off of my car loan, this is how much extra I have to pay every month. And by doing that, you're being proactive. See how we're making our way through this list. And, it's not easy, because if you are going to be paying that extra money per month, you might not be able to do something else. But because you made this goal a priority, you're going to put that before something else. And probably one of the hardest things about this is to be patient. I would love to be able to go out for a run and be able to run nonstop for as many miles as I want, but that is not my reality. It takes a while to get to the point where you can run for long distances. So as much as we would love to be able to offer you a magic solution, and I'm sure there are people out there that would offer you that magic solution. We're not going to do that, because I think Brittany and I are realistic about appreciating that this is hard stuff, and this is it's hard to do. And kind of going back to the goal, I mean, I gave an example of a car loan. You can do the same with your credit cards. As you know, you have a credit card balance of $10,000. So maybe your goal is to get it down to $5,000 in 18 months. You want to be concrete about them so that you can measure, you can make a concrete plan that you can follow, and then you can measure your progress. And that in and of itself will make you feel, you'll feel rewarded and satisfied when you can see that your hard work is being rewarded and it's paying off.
Yeah, absolutely. And also want to add that really important too to get others around you on board with this change. So if your significant other is a spender and you're really trying to pay off your own credit cards, your own debt, and they're just going out and using their credit card for everything, or you're always wanting to go out to dinner, just trying to have that conversation with what your goal is and your plan is will be really important, because if they're constantly wanting to go out to dinner and then you're using that money that you were going to use to pay down your car loan in a shorter period of time, just think about that to just get others around you on board, I think is another really good thing that will help you stick to your plan and get your goal that you're going to have.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Brittany. And you probably, it's hard to talk about debt. A lot of times people don't want to talk about debt. It's kind of like your weight. You don't go out and broadcast that for the most part. So most people also don't broadcast the amount of debt that they have. But you would probably be very surprised to know all the people that you know in your daily life that are struggling with debt issues. And, once you open that door and you start talking about what you're experiencing, you'll find that, there are people there that can support you and you can support them in making these changes.
Getting into the good stuff, breaking the debt cycle. So it can be hard to get started. So my suggestion when I'm working with members is really just start small. Like Tanya said, setting a goal of just being debt free. That's great, but that's really overwhelming. You don't even know where to start. So then you just kind of start using the credit cards again and just say, forget it, I'll try again next year. So really just starting to do small things. Like my suggestion when I'm working with members is doing a small amount from your paycheck each month to put it into a savings account. Even $10. It doesn't seem like a lot, but you get paid weekly. That's $40 at the end of the month that maybe you weren't doing before. So again, changing those habits gradually. Another thing, helping a member with, we were doing a budget and they would get coffee every single day on their way to work. And sometimes that's $4 or more coffee. So instead of doing that, started making coffee at home, simple, small change, and then using that money that they were already using on the coffee to then put it towards a credit card minimum payment. And I think it ended up being like $80 a month that they were spending on coffee, then now is being used to a credit card bill. So thinking it in a small bit like that, a small change can help you. And then you're starting to pay down a credit card, which can feel really good. And then stop accumulating the debt. Easier said than done, but if you look at your credit cards, put them away. When I was trying to break out of my debt cycle, I started taking my credit cards out of the wallet and I leave one in there because I was such a bad habit of reaching for that. If it was in there, I'd be like, oh, I'll just use this and I'll pay it off later. Or, oh, I'm at Old Navy, I'll use that card. I started taking them out of my wallet. So then I was reaching for my cash, my debit card, or saying, all right, I don't have the funds for that. My other thing that I like to tell my members is with a credit card to just say to yourself, okay, do I have the means to pay this off when my bill comes, or whatever that thing is, pay it off within 30 days. And if you don't, then maybe you don't need it right then, and then you can save up more to buy it. I started using that rule of thumb for myself, and it took me a while, but it started to work. And knowing that if I didn't have the money to pay that off, then I knew I wasn't going to get it. I was talking to Tanya before this call, and I was listening to the news this morning, and they were talking about Black Friday deals, Christmas shopping, all these deals, got to go get them now. And at the end of what they were talking about, they said, but if you can't pay for it now and are just going to put on your credit cards, you should wait to not get into that debt before the Christmas time. And I was telling her, I thought it was really interesting because usually they don't push that. They just like push the deals. They want you to get out there. So it's kind of nice just hearing them say like, hey, but don't just put it on your credit card. So that goes with the stop accumulating your debt. Some few other things, evaluate your spending habits, know where your money's going, track your spending. Just like I mentioned about the coffee, I had sat down with this member. We went over a budget. We looked and said, wow, you have $80 a month going just towards your coffee run in the morning. So like, what can we do to make that change? Or getting lunch at the office every week. What can we do to make that change to put that money maybe in a savings account? And along the lines of that, identifying your needs versus your wants. Prioritize and trim your expenses to help free up that cash flow to put towards your debt. Example I use and I work with my members when we're doing a budget is the TV subscriptions. I mean, I think all of us probably we could have up to 5 or 6 of those. And do we really need all of those? We maybe want them to watch all of our shows, but can we get rid of a few of them and only have 2? Or get rid of cable and have those TV subscriptions, because that could save you a big chunk of money as well. So really looking at your needs versus your wants is going to help you. And then knowing what you owe. Do an inventory of all your debts. Like, do you know how much you owe on your car loan or your personal loan or your credit card if you wanted to chip away at that a little bit more? Do you know exactly what your minimum payment is on your credit card, or you just kind of, you get the bill, you pay it, and you move on? Important to know what exactly your minimum payment is, because can you pay more to pay off that credit card sooner, I think is really important, a part of breaking that debt cycle.
You know, it's hard when you start really going through all of this because most times, a lot of times you find yourself, your credit card balances are increasing even though you're making more than the minimum payments because you find that you have to still use them to pay for your monthly expenses. So you find yourself in this cycle where you're using the cards because you're paying on them without otherwise changing anything else. And that's the hard part, is that you have to kind of step back and see if there's something to change, if you're able to. And, you know, we'll talk about, you know, if you realize that there really isn't anything, we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But it is hard to identify that in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Again, with breaking the debt cycle, number one thing that I like to say, and I'm sure Tanya will agree, is create a budget and a spending plan. Know what money's coming in and what money's going out. I think it's probably one of the hardest parts that when I'm working with members is to go over their budget with them. Here at Town & Country, in my department, we use something called a personal financial statement. When members are coming to us and they just don't know where to turn, or we're trying to help them with a deferment or a restructure of their loans, we do a budget. We like to see, all right, what is the best solution for this member? How much do they have left over at the end of the month? Or are they negative in their budget? And we need to rework that and create a better plan for them. So I think in all of this, creating a budget and looking at all your expenses is super, super important and really, really helpful. And prioritize your savings.
I'm going to interrupt you, Brittany.
Yeah, you're fine.
So on that budget and spending plan, what I often, because I do this with clients as well, and I tell my clients, I give them a blank budget and I say, here, fill it out and get it back to me. And so what I get back is completely understandable, and it's what I personally have done as well. So you put in your mortgage or your rent payment, your car payment, you put in something for your electric bill and maybe insurance, right? Because those are kind of your fixed costs. And then when it comes to eating out or groceries or gas or presents or travel or whatever the case may be, it's hard to figure out what that is monthly. So what I personally have done, and I've encouraged clients to do, and I'm old-fashioned in that I like pen and paper. So I got myself a pretty notepad that I like. And every month, for about 6 months, I wrote down everything that I spent. And then I took it all at the end of the 6 months and then kind of averaged it and figure out kind of what my budget really is. And, you know, what am I spending on things and where should I be cutting back? But it's hard, you know, figuring out what your budget is because you don't know, I mean, what you're necessarily spending all the way.
So some other things, breaking that debt cycle, try and prioritize your savings. Building that savings will really help you reduce your reliance on your credit cards. Another thing I say, just small amounts, like I said in the beginning, take $10, $15 from a paycheck. It seems really small, but to put it into a savings and you can just set it, forget it, set it on auto pay can really, again, help you so you're not reaching for those credit cards and can help with those unexpected expenses.
So I'm going to interrupt you on again, Brittany, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
We have a question from Lisa, and thank you. Lisa, you actually, I think you said you have several questions, and I think they're all there, but I'm going to try to break them out, and you can tell me if we miss anything. But it sounds like you are doing your best to manage everything and using a spreadsheet to kind of figure everything out as always is the case, life happens and emergencies come up. And so your question, I think, is a good one and goes to kind of the heart of what we're talking about, is how to handle those emergencies, whether it's medical expenses or basement flooding and damages associated with all of that. So when you're kind of looking at all of that, generally speaking, if you have medical debt, most doctor's offices or medical offices will work with you as far as entering into kind of a very reasonable payment plan. Your basement is a bigger concern, of course, because we want to make sure that you have a safe, dry place to live that isn't going to make you sick, and that you can be in your house. So I think to the extent that the question is, what do you do to cover emergencies? And it probably depends on the extent of the emergency. I think if you need to get your basement fixed, you very well may have to look into perhaps a home equity line of credit or maybe a personal loan. And there are good reasons to take on debt in those situations, assuming you can afford the payment terms. And if you were going to do a personal loan or a home equity line of credit, that those payments are generally affordable, or you likely wouldn't be approved for it, right, Brittany?
Yeah, and
so,
I was going to say too, we have a lot of members that if they come up with, we get like the furnace is broken, they need to replace that, or the basement's flooding, they have to do that. We offer at the credit union, a lot of other financial institutions, deferments on loans. Also, if you have other loans, you don't want to get behind on them. Maybe you can't afford another small payment, and that's a really good solution too. But you could do a deferment, skip a few months of payments, let kind of self reset. That's another option. But that's a good question, because life happens and sometimes you just
true.
don't know where to turn.
And we'll talk a little bit about prioritizing what debts to pay. But, medical debt generally is at the bottom of the list. And the reason why is that there's no interest associated with that. And most medical offices, doctors will work with you on payments. So they're, if you have limited resources and you're trying to figure out which emergency to pay, the basement wins over the medical bills, for sure. So hopefully that answered your question, Lisa. And feel free to add or follow up in the chat, okay?
A few other things with accelerating your repayment. You may need to generate more income. So it's not always an option, but a second job to get more income, selling things, paying a little extra to your loan. Same with what I recommend of taking that little bit of extra and creating a savings. Could you also pay a little extra on your auto loan or your credit cards to get it paid down faster? Usually my rule of thumb is if my payment is I don't know, let's just say $142 a month, I'll usually try and round up to $150. Doesn't seem like a lot, but that little amount is going to start paying it down and going to principal. So again, a little bit of a change will really help you start paying down those debts faster. And living within your means. Don't spend more than you earn. This goes along with the credit cards, really trying to look at that budget, your spending plan. Are you using your credit cards for everyday expenses just to get by, or you really want all the new shoes and clothes? Is it within your budget? And if it's not, putting away those credit cards will help that. Debt repayment strategies. Is you, Tanya?
Sure. So this starts with pay credit card debt first. And I'm going to put a little asterisk next to that, because this is assuming your secured debt is otherwise all set. Either you're current on your mortgage and you don't have any problems, or if you're one of the lucky few without a mortgage, your car loan is current, there are no issues there. We're looking at the credit cards. We included this here at the top of the list because generally, as we know, credit cards have the highest interest rate and fees associated with them. They're kind of insane sometimes when you start looking at the interest and the fees on these cards. So there are different theories as far as how to pay them off. And, all the quote unquote financial experts that you'll see out there on, social media will have their positions as to why theirs is the best. But the two main types that you will see out there are referred to as the Snowball and the Avalanche. One theory of debt repayment is take whatever your smallest balance is on your credit card and pay that off in full. And the idea being that that will give you a sense of accomplishment and success that you can then take on to the next credit card or debt. And that does not account for, the interest rate or the fees. That's solely whatever you can afford to pay off first, do it, and then move on to the next one. The other method or theory is to look at the interest rates, and look at the credit card with the highest balance, the highest interest rate, and you should still be paying everything else, but divert any extra to paying off that highest interest credit card first. And then once that is paid, then you're going to use that money that you were paying to pay on the next highest interest rate card. So hopefully that makes some sense. I mean, again, add to the chat if that makes no sense or you have questions about that. But those are really the two theories as far as where to start, who to pay off first. And you know yourself better. If you're someone that has that spreadsheet and you're listing all the interest rates and the balance, then you probably are better suited to pay off the high interest ones first. If you're someone else that just says, oh, I have all this debt and these are the balances and I don't know how to deal with it, then maybe doing the method where you pay off the smallest balance would be best for you. There's no right or wrong. It's, debt is personal. How people approach it is personal. And so you can do whatever option exists, is better for you. Other than that, the other options are to consolidate the debt. So sometimes because the interest rates are so high, you'd be better suited to perhaps go to the credit union and go to your financial institution and try to get a personal loan where you then pay off the high interest rate credit cards and then you have a more manageable payment loan. The refinance the debt is kind of the same as far as that is concerned. I see a question about when do you think it's helpful to pull from your savings to pay off credit card debt? That's a great question. So I think the general rule of thumb that you'll hear out there is that you want to have 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses and savings. And where you are in the 3 to 6 months depends on your situation. So if you are a 2-income household, pretty stable jobs, and you both have, and there's some, savings, you might be able to get away with the 3 months. If you otherwise are, your income might be a little precarious, or you've worked really hard to put your savings and you're concerned, then you might want to err on the side of having a few more months in savings. So if you have that in savings, and then you might want to think about using any money above and beyond that to pay off credit card debt. Now, I know that there are folks out there on social media that will tell you only need $1,000 in savings before you start paying off your credit card. So if you have anything over $1,000, use that to pay off your credit cards. I mean, I guess, but to me, $1,000 isn't going to go far if you have an emergency at your house, right?
Right.
The car breaks down and you need a fridge and the basement flooded, right? Or your furnace, has a significant repair. $1,000 isn't going to cover it, and then you're going to be back to using the credit cards again. And then you're going to feel really down about that because you'll feel, and unwarranted because you are not failing, but you will feel like you failed because you're using the credit cards again. So I don't love the idea of having minimal savings on that. I think I would rather you have that cushion before you start tackling the debt. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah, let me know if you have any follow-up. And then the last On this side, as far as debt repayment, is the payment plans. And I think I kind of alluded to this when we talked about the medical bills. A lot of creditors, and especially when it's individuals that you owe money to or hospitals, they'll agree to a payment plan with you that is manageable. So, hopefully that is something that you can manage directly with them. And that is another option on how to deal with repayment of the debts.
And I'll piggyback on the consolidation of debt, working with members in the collections department. A lot of the times we look at, do you have a car loan that has equity in it? Do you have a home that has equity in it? And can we roll some unsecured debt, credit cards, personal loans into an auto loan, say, and it has a lower interest rate than maybe a credit card or a personal loan has, and then we can get you a lower payment. So that's always an option. And then the home equity loans when we consolidate, or just refinancing, and maybe we can lower a payment on an auto loan or a personal loan that you have with us to rework your budget. So we do that all the time. It goes back to, we look at the budget. What is the best solution? Can we save money some places and use that equity that you've built over time in your home or an auto loan? Dealing with debt collection.
Okay, so this, I think, I'm going to just kind of summarize so that if you are in a situation where you're dealing with debt collectors, that you understand what your rights are. And I want to address kind of some of the biggest questions that I get from clients or folks when I first meet with them. So when you have been unable to pay an outstanding bill with a bank or a credit union, they'll likely start checking in with you, sending you some letters, seeing how things are going, and finding out when you're going to be able to make a payment. If they're successful, then you'll just be working with them directly. If they're unable to come to some sort of arrangement on repayment, then what a lot of times the bank or credit union or credit card issue, whoever they are, will do is they'll either hire someone to help them collect the debt, or perhaps they might even sell your debt to a debt collector. When that happens, your rights as far as contact actually increases. So debt collectors are limited as to when they can call you. If you send them a letter in writing that says, do not call me, only send me letters, or do not call me, I only want to deal with the original creditor, they have to comply with that. But if Brittany's calling you and you tell her, Brittany, stop calling me, she'll call you all day long if she wants to. Those rules don't apply to her if you owe Town and Country money. So again, so just to stress, there's a difference between a debt collector and what's called the original creditor. And your rights as far as who can call and what they can say are different depending on who's calling you. One of the major comments or kind of things that I hear is people will look at their credit report and trying to figure out what they owe. And they say, oh, I don't need to worry about this one. This one's a charge off. That one's charged off and they haven't reported. And I said, do you know what a charge off is? And most people will say no, but it sounds like I don't owe them anything. And that's incorrect. So a charge off is purely an accounting term on behalf of the original creditor. They just don't want the bad debt on their books anymore. That does not mean that legally you are no longer responsible to pay. So a charge off is irrelevant from your perspective as far as trying to figure out if you're still responsible. You are still responsible, even if the debt has been charged off, which leads me to the situation where you might not be responsible. So if the statute of limitations, every contract, pretty much every crime, everything has kind of a time period where after that time, legally, you can't be sued for this debt. So, for example, when it comes to a debt, 6 years after you last used or paid or for medical incurred, if you didn't pay on it, the debt, that's the statute of limitations, which means after 6 years, a creditor cannot legally force you to pay the debt, which means they can't sue you for the debt. They can call you and send you voluntary letters of payment, but they can't sue you. If they sue you within the 6 years and get a judgment, then it's different. But if they don't sue you within the 6 years, then after that, they can no longer legally come after you. And shortly thereafter, too, it will fall off your credit report altogether, and not show up as a charge off or anything like that. It will just completely fall off your credit report. Finally, debt forgiveness and 1099. So we didn't talk that much about debt settlement, but there are some situations, and I think we're going to talk about it next, right, Brittany?
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit about kind of the tax implications there. So don't let me forget. I'll come back to that point, I think, when we talk about debt settlement.
Yeah. And I do want to add on to the charge off. We have a lot of members that we work with that we do end up having to charge off their loans, whether we had an agreement with them and they're just not financially able to pay that debt, so we did have to charge it off, or maybe we call it a skip. We weren't able to reach them, but then they call because they want to make it right. They're trying to work on their credit. So if something has to be charged off, it's not like we'll never do business, at least Town and Country, never do business with you again, or we're not going to help you. We love working with members that have the charge off. We want to work with you with a payment plan. We're going to try and help you, because a lot of times we see trying to get a home loan and they want you to pay off those charge offs or have a payment plan. So just know that if that does happen to you, or you currently have charge offs on there, it's not the end. You can contact, a lot of the times it will work with you to do a payment plan and get that on your credit as a paid charge off. So I did just want to add that piece.
Great. And we have another question that I think it ties in nicely with this slide from Lisa. And the question is it legal for a creditor to ask you for proof of income and tax returns in order to make payment arrangement? Great question. So what I have seen is, well, the short answer, is it legal for them to ask? Yes. Do you have to provide them? No. Do they have to enter into a payment plan with you if you don't jump through their hoops? Nope. So you can get into the situation. There are some creditors that they give their debt collector certain rules, and they say you can agree to a settlement of X amount or a payment in X amount, but you need to prove that their income is at a certain level. So if they have those restrictions as far as they can only agree to a certain settlement or payment if your income is at a certain level, they're requesting that to approve you for that. They're requesting that information to approve you for that repayment plan. You can certainly say, you know what, I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm willing to make the payment and try to push back a little bit, but it's not unusual or unheard of for them to require some sort of financial information before entering into some sort of payment plan or payment arrangement.
So this is talking about the debt settlement piece. So you need to reset, know the options that you have. So there's a couple of different options that we've kind of touched on already, so we'll just go into those. Just needing to reset, you need a restart. So one of those options would be a loan deferment, which I had touched on. So a lot of financial institutions do loan deferments. If you reach out, or sometimes even like student loans, I know a lot of them you don't have to pay right now, but I will have an option that's like, are you having trouble paying? Like, please click to get more information about a loan deferment. And what that is taking months of the payments. So, for example, maybe you need 3 months of payments off of paying that. And so what we do is we take those 3 payments, we put them to the end of the loan, and you do pay them at the eventually, but you have those 3 months of just no payments, so you can have that reset. So maybe you've experienced one of those life-changing things that we had talked about in the beginning, and you just need a few months to just reset. Or I had a member that recently was out of work, surgery, she had limited pay, and then her furnace broke. We were talking about furnace earlier, and she needed the money she depleted her savings from being out of work, and she needed some extra money to pay for that. So we helped her with a 3-month deferment. What she would have paid on that auto loan, she was able to pay for her furnace and didn't get behind. So they can be extremely, extremely helpful. So always just reach out to your financial institution to see if that's something they offer. Another thing which we had just touched on is a debt settlement. It can look a little different depending on who you're working with. There are big companies out there that do help you with debt settlements. As a credit union, we work with members on settlements for different reasons. Maybe the loan was charged off because at the time you just weren't financially in a good place to pay it. We had to charge it off. Now you're able to pay it, but you really can't afford to make the monthly payments, or maybe you got a bonus and you'd like to just put a lump sum towards it. So we will work with members and they'll make an offer and then we wipe away the rest of the debt. So say it's a $5,000 loan, they put $3,000 towards it, we settle it, we're not going to collect on the remaining balance, and it goes on your credit as a settlement or paid less than full. And with the last slide that was on there that Tanya was going to talk about is the 1099 that you get when you do debt settlements. I don't know if you wanted to speak on that now, Tanya.
Sure, yeah. So just like every year when from your regular job, you get a W-2 in January for the preceding year and you use it for your taxes. For those that are independent contractors or kind of had side jobs, they can get 1099s to say, you had this miscellaneous type income. And you're thinking, that's great, Tanya, but aren't we talking about debt settlement? And I'll say yes. And when it comes to debt settlement, if you do settle a debt for less than the full balance, so using Brittany's example, there was $2,000 there that you did not have to pay, that, according to the IRS, is considered income. There are some exceptions to that, but the general proposition is that that is considered income. So what would happen would be that the creditor that you settled with would then send you a 1099 and send one to the IRS as well, saying that you had $2,000 in forgiveness of debt income. And we know you didn't see $1 of that, but that's not, it was a benefit that the IRS considers taxable. And like I said, there are exceptions to that, but I want to flag that because if you are in a situation where you are settling, you want to make sure to talk to an accountant about what the tax implications may or may not be from the settlement so that you can plan for it so that you don't have any issues come the following April. And to that, one thing that I talk to clients about is if you are going to be settling a handful of debts, you may want to think about stretching them out over a couple of calendar years to minimize the tax implication or the potential tax implication there. So again, something that you want to talk to your accountant about and you don't want to ignore if you do receive it and think, oh, that must have been a mistake. Because then the IRS will think that you forgot to include it in your income and then send you a notice, and you don't want to deal with all of that. So just something to be aware of in that situation. So the last two I'll talk about, Brittany, as well, the foreclosure and personal bankruptcy. So, if you've done everything you can, you might not have any other options, and that's okay. Foreclosure, for those of you that don't know, is it's a lawsuit that's filed in the courts in Maine where the bank is seeking permission to sell your home and apply the money that they receive on the debt. Sometimes that's people's only option. With the real estate market lately, usually a lot of people have been able to sell to avoid a foreclosure. But the reality is that they still happen. And it's something that is out there, and you can go through that process as well. And bankruptcy, we won't spend a lot of time on it, but it's one of those things where people generally are scared to talk to folks about bankruptcy And Brittany has heard me say this before, but I am an awfully scary person, as I'm sure you probably already realized, to sit down with and kind of go through all of this. But a lot of times, you don't have necessarily any experience with attorneys, and you're not quite sure what to expect. And bankruptcy, is a scary word. But a lot of times it can be a helpful tool to help you reorganize and finally put a period at the end of the chapter that you've been dealing with and allow you to move forward. And it's not the end of credit as you know it. You are able to rebuild, and a lot of times you're able to rebuild quicker from a bankruptcy than if you were trying to kind of settle and reorganize on your own. So, and I know Town and Country doesn't view bankruptcy as the end of the road as far as their relationship with you as well.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say is we help members that are in bankruptcy or just finished the bankruptcy all the time. If you file bankruptcy and you are a member, we're not going to just cut you off. So you can't be a member anymore. We still want to work with you because, again, life happens, and we understand that. So moving forward. So a lot of these things we had talked about, really important is to have a goal, work towards something. And again, having a goal to be debt free, great, but maybe just start it small. Maybe having a goal of paying off one credit card before in 6 months, or even not getting that coffee every day and putting it in a savings account. So just think of something that's small, and take those small steps. Don't try and change everything overnight. You didn't accumulate all this debt overnight. So just remember to just take it small at a time, and shift your mindset from spending to paying off that debt, and seeing that savings account go up. Just really try to change your thinking, because if you're always been using your credit cards, it's going to be difficult to stop using them. So just know that it's not going to be easy to just say, okay, I'm not going to use any of my credit cards anymore, or I'm going to pay extra on my auto loan. It's going to be hard, but you can definitely do it. Prioritize your savings as well. Automate it, set it and forget it. We had talked about before, setting things up on auto pay to come out of your paycheck. If you get paid weekly, biweekly is super, super helpful, because it's getting out of your account. It's like you never had it. And then you can work with what you have in your account, what your budget is, and just everything. I always just say automatic your payments to your loans, automate it to your sub accounts and your savings account. It really, really, really helps. And celebrate your progress. Recognize all those changes you're making, your progress, that you reach your goal. You pay off a credit card, like that's an awesome feeling, or being able to pay off an entire loan. Or I know I get excited if I put up my credit card and I can pay it before the end of the month hits. Like it's something that it feels good if you've been in this debt cycle for a really long time. So make sure you celebrate that.
Great. And we're rapidly coming to the end of our hour, so we're going to wrap up last couple of slides. But before we do that, Karen had a good point that a lot of loans, you're able to purchase a loan protection kind of insurance policy that can save people from going into debt when there's been an unexpected illness or unemployment. So that's definitely something you may want to look into with your credit union or your bank, see if that's something that's available. So as we wrap up, if there are any other questions, go ahead and throw that in the chat. But we just encourage you. It's hard. This stuff is hard. It's hard to talk about. But the best thing that you can do is reach out and ask for help. All these people, all these agencies that you see here, no one's going to judge you. This is what we do on a daily basis. We have the tools to be able to help you move forward. And as hard as it is, it can help relieve a lot of stress if you just reach out on that.
Yes, exactly. And we're not scary, as you can see. And so some financial resources here for you, some credit resources, annualcreditreport.com. You can request a free credit report. Savvy Money is from us at Town and Country. You can see your credit score, get free credit report, file disputes. There's money management apps that can help you with your budget. Town and Country has a great one that if you enroll in our online banking, you could use. There's government agencies. The FTC offers consumer information on dealing with debt. There's York County Consumer Action, Avesta Housing, any of your local housing authorities that can then help you. And a financial wellness programs. There's all kinds of online offerings. Town and Country offers a series of workshops just like this one, and blogs on a range of personal financial topics, including debt.
Thank you, Brittany and Tanya. Maybe touch on a little bit about the impact of debt on somebody's credit score. You know, if they're paying off debt and get on a program to reduce your debt, any particular things to think about the dealing with the credit score piece?
That's a great question. I think the hard thing is that as a society, everyone is focused on their credit score. And I will tell you, I haven't met with one person that didn't have a fantastic credit score at some point, because that's how they got the debt in the first place. In my view, and again, I know people may disagree, but in my view, your ability to sleep at night and not stress is more important than that credit score. If you otherwise are managing your debt and working on paying them off, the credit score will follow. I think focusing too much on that adds a layer of stress for something that you can't control. It's like the Instagram algorithm or the Facebook algorithm. You don't know what they're doing, and you can't control it. So don't bother thinking about it. It'll get there. It will come once you're in a place where it makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. And just keeping in contact with your creditors, Town and Country, the members I work with, I always say, keep the line of communication open. We will work with you. And like Tanya said, the credit score is going to follow. We just need to get you on track, get a plan in place. That it's always the best.
That's great. That's great advice. Well, thanks to both of you, and thanks to all of you for joining us on the call tonight. We will be sharing a recording of this video in the coming days, and you can see on the screen contact information for Brittany and Tanya, and so feel free to reach out to them. So I want to say thank you for joining us tonight, and enjoy your evening.